that
You got to
flow?
imagine there are people in this world right now that have algorithmic systems that are going to AI and just mass producing content and just publishing it by the millions. So that's the baseline. When you go from GPT-4 to GPT-5, all that content gets better. So
Yeah.
what are you doing to get better than that content?
Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Paige, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. 2 years ago, Google sent a visit for every 2 pages it scraped. 6 months ago, that number was 1 visit for every 6 pages. And today, it's 1 for every 18. And with OpenAI, that drop is even more staggering, from 1 visit for every 250 pages 6 months ago to 1 for every 1,500 today. That's some data from CloudFlare's CEO. And AI isn't just changing search, it's completely rewriting the rules of SEO and how things get discovered. Clicks are disappearing, and AI-generated answers are the new front door to the internet. And if your brand isn't showing up in those answers, cited, trusted, and referenced, in some cases, you might as well not exist. And in this episode, I'm joined by Seth Besmertnik, CEO and co-founder of Conductor, an enterprise platform for SEO content and AI visibility, to unpack exactly what this shift from SEO to GEO, or whatever term you want to call it, there's several emerging means for companies. If you've ever relied on Google for traffic, leads, or visibility, this conversation might just change how you think about search forever. Seth, welcome to Talking AI.
Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. I was going through the product earlier, a lot of interesting stuff. We're in this like crazy space right now. I know everybody is in terms of what AI is doing and impacting companies, but like you're in the heart of it. It is completely transforming. But I'm curious, you've been in search for over a decade. You've been doing this for a very long time. If you zoom out, how has the way people discover information evolved? What's the biggest change that AI, specifically generative AI, is introduced?
Sure. You said AI is becoming the new front door to the internet. And what I thought about when you said that was it's becoming the front door, it's becoming the house, becoming the garage, it's becoming the backyard, it's becoming the whole block, it's becoming the
And you can
town.
generate it with AI if you want to get a nice image of it.
It's really that the physics of, let's go back in time a little bit more.
Yeah.
Long time ago, 100 years ago, you had a question, you waited online, talked to your village elder, got some information.
Yeah.
Last 15 years, you became really dependent on technology. You asked Google, the number of searches has consistently grown over 15 years, but also the kinds of things people search for. Used to be in the very beginning, people would type in these various STEM words like business cards or look for this. But then over time, you started asking lots of longer questions. How can I do this? Or what happens if I would do that? A lot of health related stuff. We've become very dependent on technology. But the physics of the web had been generally where you go to a search engine and then you go to a website. And for many years, the directive for all the engineers at Google was get them in and get them out. If you have a good search engine, people aren't hanging out in the search engine. You're spinning them off and they don't come back. In fact, a ranking factor used to be that if people went to your website and then went back to Google, then your site got punished for that, which is really, it couldn't be more of the opposite of the world we're in now, where AI is becoming the entire experience on the web. You said it in the stats, which were, I think, published by Cloudflare, but the directive is very different. They don't want to send visits to your website, which means people are going to be spending almost all of their time on the internet. And I'd say this outside of watching videos on YouTube or spending time on social media. That's kind of like the entertainment arm of the internet. But for everything else, it's going to be largely in an AI interface. And if you think that going from the village elder to Google was like a massive exponential change in the kinds of questions we ask and how dependent we are going to only be exponentially, once again, more dependent on AI to help us with even more nuance and even more thing, every aspect in our lives. And ultimately, it's going to be our biggest advisor, consigliere, shopping partner, travel advisor. It's profound how much of an impact it's going to have.
I like how you described it as the physics of the internet. I think one thing too, like I feel like a lot of people feel like, oh my God, our clicks are going away, search is going away. But I think the point you mentioned earlier, I think we're asking more questions now. we're just asking them to AI in a more nuanced fashion, and we're getting the answer directly back, or better yet, having a conversation with it, which is not the user experience with Google. Right? It's okay, let me get something close and then I'm going to go do my own research. It's a completely different user experience, I think, that's starting to emerge with these new tools.
The nuances is, you think about a business, businesses have had these like kind of content maps or content strategies, which is like research, consider, buy. This would be like, I was just on the phone with that email marketing software company. So it would be like, I'm starting a business. What's the best way to communicate with my customers? That's early stage. Middle stage is, I'm deciding whether I should do more email or paid ads. Late stages, I'm deciding between MailChimp and Salesforce.
Yeah.
That was like that was like your content strategy to come up with those three zones. Now, when you're in AI, it's like at the end of every result, it'll tease you and say, well, maybe you can go a little bit in this direction, or you can go a little bit in this direction. Do you want me to go and look into those things for you? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Let's go down that. And it'll take you from the end. It'll take you all the way across the journey, but there's so much more information and you're so much more informed along the way, which means from a business's perspective, that then the volume of content that you have to create is only more exponential, because the nuance of the kinds of questions people are asking is so much more than it ever was before.
Yeah, and that transition from, I can't remember the buckets you mentioned, but like this unaware to product aware states is not happening on your blog anymore, where you're trying to make that transition. It's happening in the user interface. That's a great point around like how AI is actually kind of nudging you along. It's almost like this self-discovery thing. It's thinking ahead of you in a sense.
It teaches you how to make decisions.
Yeah.
It gives you the framework in which you should make the decision by. It then lets you say, well, where do you weight these things? Do you care more about this or do you care more about that? And then if you care more about that, then it takes you down a whole different stem of questions and evaluation opportunities.
Yeah.
So all of this, again, it's interesting. One may have said that like in the last couple of years, like there's only so much content Google could handle. And that's because if people are only typing in things like best running shoes, how many pieces of content can show up for best running shoes?
Yeah.
But in a world of AI, I actually think it's like suffocating right now, because there's so few pieces of content that line up to all the specific nuances. So just take the running shoes example. Someone goes to AI. I go to AI. I'm going to say, I'm 42. I have flat feet. I've had this problem before. I've tried these shoes and they don't work for me. One foot is wider than the other. I'm in the streets of New York and this is the kind of running I do. That's a lot more stuff. Like who has content for that?
Yeah.
Why is Reddit the number one most cited source of information for AI right now? Is it because Reddit is the ultimate sort of gospel of truth for information? No, it's because it's really the only place where a lot of this stuff exists, because there's no other content that backstops all these nuanced queries that people have in AI.
Yeah, that's the key you hit on. It's nuanced, and AI is able to take that into consideration. I'll throw another variable for you. You can't tell right now, but I'm 6'8", so I got size 15 shoes. I'll throw that into the mix while you're at it too. And we're going to get to it in a second. Like, how do you actually tactically start to adapt so you do show up in AI search? We're going to get to that in a bit. So everybody listening, I know that's probably the top thing on your mind right now. But I'm curious, like, as you were talking earlier, this like experience came back to my mind. I was in middle school, maybe 6th grade, something like that. And I remember experiencing Google for the first time. It was like Google and Dogpile and things like that, where in the past you had to go to the library and go research something and all of that. Do you remember your first experience with both Google and then also ChatGPT or whatever tool you had? I'm curious, like, what were those inflection points? How were they the same or different, if you remember at all?
Well, I could share my first experience in remembering like the beginnings of SEO, if that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a roommate and we lived on top of this bike shop on 34th Street in Manhattan, and I was in college. And his name was Shermy. And he initially, when he was living with me, was on unemployment. He like lost his job. He was getting checks effectively from the government. And he was starting a business. Fast forward maybe a year and a half, he was making like thousands of dollars a day. And
Yeah.
we had all this cool stuff in our apartment that he
Like, what are you doing?
electric drums and this crazy couch. We had one of these like giant
Yeah.
TVs, like it was like the first like flat screen TV. And when you went to Google and you typed in the word business cards, he had a website that
Ah,
showed up number one. He had another website that showed up number two. He had another website that showed up number three. Now, at that time, I was starting a business while going to college that was giving therapy over the internet. I remember no matter who I talked to about that business, nobody was interested in it. And then I remember looking at what he was doing, and I was like, well, how do other companies figure out how to do what you do? And that became the very beginnings of getting involved in search and digital marketing. And the business grew really quickly once we started it from that point.
yeah, it's
Once
interesting. I think so many people. Go ahead.
that I was saying on ChatGPT, I don't remember the first time looking at it, but I do remember the first time. I remember the feeling when I used it, which was, this is going to take over the world.
Was that a good feeling or a bad feeling or mixed?
I was more, I think, scared probably in the beginning.
Yeah.
No, I was more scared. Like I wasn't sure what it all meant.
Yeah. Natural kind of human reaction there. But there's so many terms, I think, emerging right now. I can think of three off the top of my head: GEO, AEO, AIO. What are these? Do you have a favorite? And I'm curious too, like you're so deep in the SEO world. Where is it the same and where is it different? Because I'm of the belief there's a lot of core principles that are still the same that exist in SEO that still pertain to this new world we're going to.
Sure. Great question. There's something like 50 or 60 or 70 startups that have emerged in the last 6 months or so that are
Yeah.
offering AEO, GEO software.
Yeah.
Most of them, we have a slide that has a picture of all of them, and it's, is this really innovation or is this not, right? Because they're all kind of do the same thing. And it also shows that it's not that hard to do the same thing if there's so many companies that all did this so quickly.
Yeah.
I think that companies certainly are scrambling right now to get answers to this. It's not settled in. Do I have a preference on AEO versus GEO? Not really at the moment. It's I don't really love any of them. I answer engine optimization, like AI is much more than an answer engine. Again, it's your life partner. It is your
Yeah.
config. I put stuff in there on coaching for like my parenting coaching. I was doing over the weekend language training, learning Spanish and in using like the voice version of ChatGPT. So it's so much more than that. And then GEO, GEO is already a thing, but the bigger thing is that it's about being and owning and showing up and performing well in AI. I think there will be a category that settles in on that. I think we're identifying how we want to go with that. Right now, Conductor is extremely differentiated because unlike these 50 or 60 startups that just do how many times did someone mention you in ChatGPT, we have a full cycle solution where we do measure, but then we also help you identify which topics you should be building content for. We help you
Yeah.
identify how to build good content for that. And we actually build the content for that. We measure it and show you the full end-to-end performance of the content you create. We monitor your site to make sure that you're technically going to be healthy and that your content stays healthy. So if everyone else is AEO that just does one thing, does that make us AEO because we do everything? These are some of the small problems that software companies have to figure out.
Yeah. Really good points there. And I think too, with this whole move, they think of SEO like authority, right? Relevance, the technical optimization, the user experience, all those things still apply in this same world. Where is it the same? Where is it different? And then I think we can start to get into like, where is the nuance on how you start to show up in some of the, like, what is showing up, right? Because it's a different type of thing, I think, than it used to be with 10 blue links.
It was a great question. So there's a lot. So part of why I brought up these small companies is because part of their positioning is like, if you're doing SEO, that's bad. And you got to do the new stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of falseness or misperception in that. So my view of SEO for the last 5 years, it was not stuffing keywords in your pages. That didn't work. That hasn't worked for a long
That already wasn't working.
I mean, I always say when Larry and Sergey started Google, Were they ever, you know what? When people search in Google, we're going to show them the companies that are really good at SEO. No,
Yeah.
they're going to show them the companies that have really good content, really good digital experiences. So how did you do SEO for the last 5 years? Well, you had to be really good at knowing what people want, and you had to be really good at delivering it to them in the form of better content and better digital websites, which meant
Yeah.
technically strong websites and really good content and products. So all of that is the fundamental formula for showing up in AI. The thing with AI, though, is it's times 10. If you had 3 personas before, now you have 300 personas. You got 3 buyer journey stages, you now have 10. If you were making 10 pieces of content a week, you now need to make 100. Like everything is exponentially greater because of the thirst from AI to have so much more nuanced content. Now, what is showing up? That's a really good question. So the simple versions of that are things like, is your brand being mentioned? Is your content being a source of citation?
Yeah.
And then there's, what's the sentiment? When people talk about your brand, is it positive or is it negative? Why is it positive? Why is it negative? When you show up, are you showing up? What's your relative? Are you first on the list or are you last on the list? Right? These are also things. So I think that from a brand perspective, what you want is, well, firstly, you want to know what people are looking for. So what's their customer journey look like? And as if you were to simulate that customer journey, is it favorable to you? Are you in the conversation and are you being in the reference in the conversation favorably and ideally better than your competition? That's really showing up. Now, maybe there'll be some opportunities where there'll be some link backs to your website and you'll get some visitors that will be few and far between, but will convert really well. But I even think that's going to be very limited going forward. It's going to be about having somebody advocate on your behalf.
Yeah, I'll give you a story too. I was at AI conference or something. I was talking with a leader at a very large bank. I'm not going to mention the name, but I think if somebody on his team just asked, is, X bank a good bank? Right. And got back the results. And what it was referencing was a lot of forums, right, that were specific to individual branches, and a lot of bad experiences that might have happened was what was getting returned. So the persona perception of this brand was what was happening in this like random forum about some experience they had at the branch level, which I think is a completely different thing from if you search that on Google, you probably get, maybe it's the branded term that pops up or something very intentional from the brand. So that was, I think, kind of an aha moment for them, which then you get to, okay, well, how do you account for that? Maybe you're more present in these forums and, maybe you're using AI to help there in some way. But I feel like everything just got a lot more real in a sense, more nuanced, back to your point earlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's still a lot of unknown. ChatGPT just rolled out like their agent mode not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. This is interesting because even though you're still on AI now is like going out to websites and doing
Yeah.
stuff on your behalf. It's interesting how much of the internet is activated through an agent mode type experience versus like people syndicate. Does Amazon sync all of its products catalogs directly into ChatGPT, or does ChatGPT go and shop for you?
Yeah.
Either way, you're still doing it on ChatGPT. You're not doing it on Amazon's website.
Exactly. Yeah. In one point, it was Dharmesh, CTO HubSpot, had this article, is really good. We can put it in the show notes, but he mentioned people's available attention is increasingly scarce, and an AI's attention, AI agent, whatever you want to clarify it as, is effectively infinite. Right. So it's almost, how are you optimizing and serving not only for humans now, but also the AI agents that will be, like you said, going out and searching your website. And I've seen some stuff there as well. Like you have the robots.txt file that kind of gives these crawlers context for how to use your site. Curious your thoughts there. I've heard of a new form of LLM.txt where you're kind of giving context for the agent in terms of how to use your website, what is available, or even maybe an MCP connection. Any kind of early thoughts into that? There's not really a standard yet.
Yeah. What we advise our customers is that short term, your primary way of communicating with AI is going to be through content. Longer term, there will be some place where you could put content or data or tables or some version of meta information that will be just for the AI. Now, whether
Yeah.
that is like a feed, whether that becomes redirecting the user agent when the AI bot comes to your website versus the human, that's sort of undetermined. There's not a standard protocol right now, but
Yeah.
it is definitely in our future that there has to be just a agentic way of feeding information to AI.
Yeah. I mean, you could even see where there's an agent on your side, your website or product catalog or whatnot, where the search agent and them can kind of interact on behalf of the user and the brand, right? So then it becomes even more
Yeah.
nuanced in a sense, which is kind of cool and
Yeah. It's
crazy
one
to
of the things
think
we
about.
track in our product is like how often are the AI bots coming to your site? Like our
Really?
company
Okay.
is looking at, we publish a piece of content and in the next day or two, like we could have hundreds of AI bots coming to look at that content.
Wow.
And if we make a good piece of content, we know because the AI bots are consuming it so fast. And then content that's not great, AI bots don't really come that often. So that's a new first class citizen. This is an AI bot.
Yeah. I've heard things too, FAQ type of content potentially works well because it's like question answer, well formatted comment, a content where you're saying in summary of, it's in bullets, it's easily consumable. Any hot takes on that would maybe working or maybe it's just kind of a little bit of hype right now?
Yeah. If you think about that world of an AI only feed, that's going to look like some kind of table.
Yeah.
Could look like a table. Now, when you look at a big piece of content, like a blog piece of content, like it's a big chunk of stuff, but what does AI do? Like it throws it into a vector database. It gets rid of all the junk and it it puts it into a table in its own way, right? A little more complicated than that. So an FAQ, I feel, is somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's very structured. And I think that's exactly how AI likes to make content. So, when I talk about you have 100 personas now you need to build content for, that doesn't necessarily mean that now you have to make 100 pieces of content around the same topic. Here's a good example. I like to play pickleball. So if you were doing a search for like how to play pickleball, someone who's 18 is going to have a very different set of questions than someone who's 95, 85, 75.
Yeah.
Like my dad plays, he's 78. So it's going to be like, is it dangerous? Am I going to get hurt? What are the ways to avoid getting hurt?
Yeah.
And then someone who's 18 is going to be like, is this like old person sport? People under 25 actually play this game. Yes. Champion of the world is 21 years old and the best female is 18. So that would all be like questions that you can have in there that are all persona specific, but that doesn't necessarily need to be 5 different versions of how to play pickleball. It doesn't all have to be on there. So that's a way to solve some of that problem. So yeah, long answer of saying thumbs up on the FAQ content, glossary content, all that stuff's really good.
So let's get into like kind of a thought experiment. And this may be even in some of the platform as well, but I think folks can start to kind of reverse engineer some of this, right? Because you're hitting at the core of the awareness journey and jobs to be done for a specific persona. And in the past, you do a lot of user research, talking to customers, all of that's still great, but you can almost simulate some of that now with AI, talking to ChatGPT, where you can have a conversation and figure some of this stuff out. And you can get into, okay, well, what questions may this person, to your point, ask about pickleball when they're chatting with AI? So you can start to almost get this framing of the types of questions, conversations people are going to have, which can then influence your content in a sense. So I think that's one thing too. Like people don't need to feel like, oh God, AI's, taking over, we're screwed. You can use it on your side too to kind of help combat it as well in a sense. Curious, any of those kind of like tactics that you can use AI.
To win in AI, you need to use AI.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Well said.
what you described is almost exactly what our product does. So,
Yeah.
for example,
Just much easier, I'm sure, than talking to ChatGPT.
it does a lot of the synthesis for you. So you give it a couple of prompts or topics that you want to make a piece of content about. What we go and do is we go and find all the best pieces of content on the web for that given topic area. So we'll look at what shows up on the Google search page. We'll look at content that's used as cited sources in AI search, and then we'll analyze it, and we'll analyze it all. And then we will then use AI as part of the analysis to then say, well, what are the kinds of questions and things that are areas of interest that people would have that this content supports? And then take that one degree further. What are the kinds of questions and topics that are related to this that are like 1 degree further, 1 degree behind in the customer journey? And then we produce a whole list of questions that become the basis for a content brief. So then it's like, here's all the questions that you should address in order of priority for this particular audience. And then when you make the content, we actually write the content and structure it that way. Or if you take a piece of content you already have and you want to score it, you just drop it in the product. We generate all the questions, and then we do analysis to see how good does that content do against performing for all these questions. And then we give them recommendations about how to make the content better. You know what? People ask a lot about how this tire works in these kinds of conditions. You kind of addressed it, but it would really good if you were more specific over this scenario. And then a content creator can go in and add that elements and make the content more authoritative.
Yeah. No, that's great. It can give context for the sources you are seeing cited. That gives context of, okay.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's like a publication or something like that, that gives you a perfect roadmap of who you should be talking to and trying to get on their publication and whatnot.
A human being could do that. It would take a really long time to do. It might take you a couple days to do that and to rerun that cycle, but technology does that for you. Like the Conductor product does that for you. So it's almost like the only way to actually scale, I keep talking about 10x, 100x. That doesn't mean that the quality bar has to also get higher while increasing your volume.
Yeah.
You know, I've been saying content factory, but then I've also say Bentleys are made in a factory.
Exactly.
Rolls Royces are made in a factory. Mercedes-Benz made in a factory. So they're not bad cars because they're made in a factory, but they can mass produce a lot of Mercedes-Benz at scale and have high quality. That's what we need to do with our content process. And the only way to do that is to use AI.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy. Do you think I'm curious where you think we are on this tipping point of AI? I don't know how you define better, but better at writing than humans. Do you think we're already there? Do you think there's still a gap? How do you think about that specifically? Or does it depend, I guess? It's dependent on all the context you provide it and whatnot to determine how nuanced it gets.
I think it's a good question that I tend not to think about it that way.
Yeah.
What I think about is that whatever AI can produce on its own, I live in the world where you have to be better than everybody else in a digital marketing world. You can't just be the same. You can't be mediocre. Mediocre gets you no results. So regardless of how good ChatGPT or Gemini become at making a piece of content with a very minimized set of prompting, hey, make me a piece of content on how to play pickleball. It'll do it for you, right? I think about how good are people at actually using the tools? How good are their prompts? How structured are their prompts? And how capable are people to provide augmentation to the AI to give it unique information? Because if you're asking AI to make a prompt, to make a piece of content on how to play pickleball, and I'm doing the same, then why is my content going to be better than yours? But let's just say you go out and you go interview the top 10 best pickleball players in the world. And you take the transcripts of that, and then you convert those transcripts into concentrated wisdom. And then you load that concentrated wisdom into AI along with all of your wisdom and your best practices to make a good piece of content. So then you have the best of AI, the best of your brain, the best, smartest experts in the world, and you could combine those 3 sources.
Yeah.
That's going to be better than any human in the world. That's
a good point, because the floor is going to be raised to where anybody can create this new level of content. To your point earlier, then you're not standing out if you're still on that floor.
Exactly.
And what's the nuance
exactly.
to get past that?
You got to imagine there are people in this world right now that have algorithmic systems that are going to AI and just mass producing content and just publishing it by the millions. So that's the baseline. When you go from GPT-4 to GPT-5, all that content gets better. So what are you doing to get better than that content?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing if you're writing a fiction novel, like it needs to be better than other people for people to want to read it.
Yeah.
Same thing if you're writing website content, whatever it is, it needs to get above the noise.
And I think we're going to see this evolution where some of the human aspects start to emerge. You look at trusted publications, things like that. I think that's where, because I think AI has a very good BS meter in a sense compared to just standard old Google search. You look at, I think distribution and audience is just such an undervalued thing as well. When you talk about how do you build awareness? So some of that nuance may change and the strategies may change as time goes on as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, with the product evolution, like what's Conductor, what's on the roadmap that you can share? Because I'm sure there's, as a founder, a million things that you want to build, all the new things changing, all the cool new tools, all the new ideas. What can you share? And then how do you actually prioritize what to build?
Yeah. Well, we're very transparent. We just did a webinar today with our customers. We're not very paranoid about people that are, I guess competitors. Or my view is that be transparent helps you get the best feedback. And then and it's all about execution. It's all about moving quickly. And if you got your competitors or other companies and they're copying you, then you're winning. So on that note, the biggest place where we invest as a company is in engineering. We still do not make profit or have EBITDA because we put all of our money back into innovation. We firmly believe, I'm wearing this like customers first t-shirt, which looking in here, it's like my daughter ruined. Yeah, but I wear this t-shirt and it's our business strategy effectively, which is put our customers first, and our customers deserve the very best products. And there's still so much to build. And I've been speaking a lot about how to make great content and the need to make great content and the volume and all of that. But I would say in terms of our vision, right, it's like we want to be able to provide an end-to-end system that does all of that and does it better than any other system and can help you fully optimize and fully perform and make great content and great experiences that really give you the best opportunity to perform well in search and AI. And right now we're iterating so quickly on this. Like we just did 9 feature releases yesterday. We've moved our cycles up from monthly to weekly at this point in time. We're not even like doing like internal enablement before we release things to customers. We're sort of doing it in parallel right now, which is kind of hectic, but it's also fun. It's really fun. And I think there's just so much instrumentation that needs to get built. There's definitely all of the measurements, but the measurement also needs to be full end to end. So how do you give a CMO of a large organization like a way to know exactly how all these pieces are working together? Yes, you want to know about AI presence, but you still have a website and you still are getting traffic. And what are the intersection points between all of this? Figuring out how to make great content at scale is a really hard problem. It's again, doing low quality content at scale is an easy problem. High quality is a really hard problem, because you need to basically be able to scalably access wisdom, brand guidelines, brand tone, connect with subject matter experts, do very unique analysis over what makes a great piece of content, go through the iterative cycle. There's a lot of work that goes into doing that really well. And that's a lot of how our engineers spend a lot of their time, is a lot of the finer details to get something that's high quality. Like we were just doing some comparisons on GPT-5 versus 4 and how it compares to Gemini. And, we do analysis on if we are trying to make a piece of content that's 900 characters and is it 897, is it 903? It's a lot of details to really get things to be really good for people. So yeah, that's a lot of how we'll be spending our time.
Your t-shirt reminds me of the Savannah Bananas, Jesse Cole. Are you a fan of his at all? You followed it? Okay, you got to go check him out. Like you remind me of him, how you focus on the customer first. Savannah Bananas. I'm obviously a Atlanta guy, so it's more local for me.
I talk to a lot of customers, our customers, and I always say, as a business gets bigger, you get so disconnected from things. I find that the only way I can really get good context is to actually talk to customers. But then the other thing I say, which is kind of self-deprecating, is I don't have any managerial experience, or I'm not some trained operational leader. So it's like, how do I stay useful to Conductor? And the way I do that is by talking to our customers and helping everybody have good context so people can make good decisions. Who are people who work at the company are all the experts. But if they have good context from the customer, then people will choose to keep me around in my job.
Yeah, I love that. Last question I got for you. You mentioned I can't go without asking this. You're talking about engineering being a priority, the speed you're getting there. We're using it in everything we do now, and it's just completely changed how we work. What has that been like for you on the engineering side, and how your engineering teams are using AI in their process of actually developing software, the whole life cycle?
Well, our view is that this is like a cliche at this point, but it's like AI is not going to replace you. It's the people who use AI that will. So I believe that there's a lot of focus on using AI tools to write your code or find do testing for you. Mark Zuckerberg says half of his engineers are going to be AI engines at some point. We haven't seen like that being like the biggest change. That hasn't been like the biggest shift right now. I say that it's more fundamental, which is like a customer has a problem. How do you solve it? Well, me, you, and another person could get in the room and talk about it, and that's good. We can also all go into Gemini and Grok and ChatGPT before and have them help us think about how to solve the problem. And we can then bring those ideas into the discussion. And then we could take the outcomes of that discussion and have Lovable or any of the schools can go and build 25 prototypes very quickly. And then we could take those prototypes and show them to different customers and get feedback on them. And then we can use AI to analyze the feedback. So you're basically, by doing that, you've got better ideation, better solutioning, testing, faster cycle times to know what works and what doesn't work. And that's all AI. And that is the mission that we're on here, is to get everybody thinking as AI, like an AI first mindset where AI is your partner. And we're seeing that in the business. We're also seeing places where that's not in the business and how much it leaves us behind. And everybody has that moment where they do something in AI. They're like, okay, this is better than just me without this. Yeah. And once they cross that sort of chasm of sorts, right, then they become hooked. And we just need people at the company to really embrace it. And it's right now it's a weapon, but in the future, it's going to be like, if you don't do it, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah. AI adoption is so much habits, just forming new habits more than anything else. So many people think about the tools. So much of it is just the habits and building those new habits over time. But Seth, great having you on Talking AI. Where can people find Conductor, learn more about it, and find you as well?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Seth Besmertnik. So like I'm pretty active there. I try to publish a couple pieces of content on a weekly basis. People can email me, seth@conductor.com. Conductor is conductor.com. You can ask AI to find us, or you can just you can still go to our website.
I know I got to do an AI search.
You can go to our website. Well, we still have one, and I'm on Instagram. I have a public account. So I'm pretty accessible if you want to find me. But LinkedIn is probably where I do most of my communicating and sort of interacting.
Nice. Awesome, Seth. Thanks for talking some AI.
Yeah. And also where it's worth mentioning, we have a trial of our product. It's free. And I encourage anybody to go in there and generate some, see what it's.
We'll throw that in the show notes. Folks can check that out. So if you're listening right now, we'll just drop a link into that, and give it a try.
Awesome. Awesome opportunity. Awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com.